Great. So we'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, February 26th to order. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our special and valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda amended to add delegation C3, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey? Is there any discussion on A1 as amended? Seeing none, call the question on A1. That carries unanimously. Item B1, regular council meeting minutes, February 12th. Can I get a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Rint. Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Discussion on B1. None. Call the question on B1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to adopt the minutes from the public hearing meeting of February 12th. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on B2? Seeing none, call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. Delegations. First delegation is Amit Kumar. Please come forward. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody, members of the council. So I'm here on behalf of the local trucking community and also Canadian Trucking Association of BC. And what I want to discuss here today is it's a matter of utmost importance, the critical shortage of commercial truck parking within the township of Langley and also in the lower mainland area in general. So the commercial trucking industry, it is an essential part of our local economy. It's the economy on wheels. And the township is a gateway community, and the viability and support of the township is very essential for the regional trucking industry and also the regional economy. So we know that there are some concerns around truck parking. We were here at the last meeting, and there's trucks parked in the agricultural land. So some of the concerns which the opponents and the community in general have, they are around some of these things which I've highlighted. So they are, one of the biggest things is lack of commercial parking. So the shortage of suitable parking spaces for commercial trucks within the township is a pressing issue. It's not just in township, it's in Surrey, it's in Abbotsford, it's every local municipality in the region. The truckers are facing challenges in finding secure, accessible spaces for their vehicles. This is impacting the efficiency and the overall operations of the trucking industry. This has severe impact on the safety and well-being of truckers and the community. As drivers, they struggle to find safe parking spots so that they can do their mandatory rest breaks. They can go home to their families because there's no space, so they're struggling with this every day. The shortage of parking space in this area is known for like 20 plus years, and we don't see anything coming from the government, local bodies to address this issue. So we need the township and the local governments to provide solutions to this. One thing that's happening is the opponents have concerns regarding environmental pollution. So environmental concerns are valid, but it is important to note that commercial trucking industry is making significant strides in adopting cleaner, fuel-efficient, low-emission technologies. The trucks today are not the same that they were like 20, 50 years ago. The imminent introduction of electric and hybrid trucks, which is going to come in like next 5 to 10 years, is going to further emphasize the importance that the industry is putting into environmental friendly technologies and adopting them. The trucking industry is ready to follow regulations around parking as well. All we seek is the government to work with us and give us a framework to follow to ease this problem. We can provide environmental assessments every 3 years or 5 years as needed to make sure that we're not damaging any land on which trucks are being parked. There's a noise pollution concern. This noise pollution concern can be mitigated through investments in green, diesel, and electric equipment. So right now, a lot of trucking companies are using the Clean BC grants to retrofit their trucks so that they have auxiliary power units. So when the trucks are stopped, the drivers, if they're sleeping, they have electric generators running on them. Our reefers, which store or which transport produce and perishables, they're also becoming hybrid. So we have electrical solutions. So when the truck or trailer is parked in the farm or at the warehouse, it can be plugged into electric source, so the noise is less. By supporting the transition to quieter and more environment-friendly technologies, we can adjust the concerns related to noise in the residential areas or in the rural settings adjacent to the truck routes. It is believed that the issue is less pressing, and by taking appropriate measures, the noise impact can be reduced to acceptable levels. Now, there's traffic issues. To alleviate traffic concerns, a temporary solution could be involving encouraging commercial trucks to utilize designated truck routes only until a comprehensive solution is implemented at a provincial level. This would help minimize the impact of local traffic and residential areas. Also, allowing for this option will ease congestion, and truckers can find spaces closer to where they live. There's an ideological opposition. It is crucial to approach the issue with an open mind and a focus on finding practical solutions that meet the current and future needs of our society. Ideological opposition should not hinder progress necessary for well-being of our community. The agricultural practices and land use that has evolved over the last 50 years since the ALC policies were formed, it has evolved. And we're able to produce more crop and harvest more production of food and meat over a smaller piece of land. For example, a chicken farm, since industrial agriculture practice came in, usually 30, 40 years ago, a farm that used to produce 100,000 chickens a year was considered a very viable option. But now 3/4 of the farms, they produce more than 500,000 chickens in a year. So it has evolved a lot. And to transport these 500,000 chickens from every farm, you need more trucks. So we cannot say no to trucking and transportation. It has to evolve as the needs of the society are evolving. This also means, so I'd like to share here that our neighboring provinces and states in the US, west of us, Alberta, Saskatchewan, they do not have such regulations or restrictions for truck parking. So we need to look outside of our province to see how we can support the industry, not just the farmers, also the truckers. So food security and farm operations, that is another concern that is raised. We need to recognize the important role truckers play in providing year-round food for our community. We must prioritize their needs as well. From transporting everything between seeds to the end harvest, the commercial trucking industry is an integral part of the whole food security system. It is our truckers that ensure we have everything we need, from food we eat, clothes we wear, everything we use during the day. It gets to us by a truck from the factory to our houses. A truck brings it, truck touches it. So we need to find a place so that we can support this very critical part of the society, the service that we all need. Now also, by opening up the parking issue to farmers or participating farms, you can create a passive income stream for the farmers. So I'm proposing that the township allow a limited number of trucks to park on participating farms, which in turn can bring a dependable source of income for them, estimating $5,000 to $6,000 a month to any farmer who participates in such a policy. This not only supports our local farms, but also contributes to the tax revenue of the city and province. This is similar to renting a horse stall at a ranch. The municipality can regulate these parking facilities and give business licenses to generate revenue for the community in return. This will also ensure that so-called 300+ farms where trucks are parked illegally, they become legitimate. We're not going under the radar. It's not an underground economy. So the farmers who allow trucks to be parked at their farms, they can generate some income, and they're not doing it under the radar.
Okay, so just want to, you've had 9 minutes now over, it was typically for 5, and it's an important issue.
Yes.
So I'm being a little bit leeway with the time, but there's a second one coming as well. So if you could get directly to what you're looking for council to do, please.
Okay, so we want you to initiate a collaborative planning process to work with us, with the stakeholders, with the commercial trucking industry, local residents. We want you to give us designated parking areas because trucking is a need of the whole community. It's not one person need. There should be incentives for greener technologies, like I said, like, electric hybrid trucks, reefers coming in. So incentives should be given, to those things. Communication with the provincial authorities. So we want the council and the mayor to communicate our, demands to the provincial authorities to say this is the need of the people living in the community. So that's, I think, what you can do for us, and it'll really help us all.
Okay, I have a few questions from council. Councillor Rampopoulos.
Yeah, I think the challenge has always just been is that these are unpermitted sites. Can you tell me what kind of traction or pushback you've had on sites that are not ALR, where you've applied or where people have applied for this type of usage on their land? Has anybody applied for truck parking and been declined by the township? That's not ALR.
The trouble is there is acute shortage of commercial industrial space, and everything that is being done is truckers are given temporary use permits, but trucking is not temporary, and we're competing with warehousing industry for $5 million to $7 million an acre. So that's basically getting us out of the whole game. We cannot compete at that levels.
Would temporary permits help
Yes.
on non-ALR land in the interim while we find a solution, though?
Mm-hmm.
Because the challenge there's the challenge is beyond just what you've listed there. So we've
Yes.
got wear and tear in our infrastructure, roads that aren't supposed to have large amounts of traffic. My first new car ever was damaged from a truck coming out of an illegal truck park and just kicked up chunks of dirt and mud for the whole width of Glover Road all the way down to Highway 1. And so when we don't have proper ESC controls and truck washes and gravel beds and things like that, so I support the idea. I greatly do, because my family is in freight rail, and we take a lot of the containers that truckers are and transporting them across the province.
Yes.
But and so we do need a solution. I do agree, but it needs to be done above board and properly so that we.
And that is the reason for asking, along truck routes, because the truck routes are, the roads are supposed to be driven, trucks are supposed to drive on those roads. Bring it out of the, underground economy, bring it into the mainstream so that truckers can actually participate in that.
So where are you suggesting?
So we're suggesting that along the truck routes, ease those regulations.
But it's ALR.
But okay, the ALR says they don't have a problem. It's the municipal regulation. So it's a ball that's been kicked, back and forth.
So has anybody actually received permission from the ALR, and then we have in turn said no?
Because anytime we bring that proposal to the municipal government, it says it's out of our hands. It's the ALR. We go to the ALR, they say you have to go through the municipal level. So where do we go? And this is the reason for 6 months we've been meeting with local municipal governments in Surrey, Abbotsford, Langley, everywhere, because we want you guys on our side, and then we can say to the provincial government, look, these guys understand it. They know we're in the community. You cannot be sitting in the ALC and making, whatever decisions you're making, that is impacting everybody else. So it has to be a, multi-pronged, like everybody has to be involved in that.
So the new truck park that's coming up underneath Portman Bridge, is that going to help at all?
Not at all.
Not at all.
It's 150 spots. So if we go back to last month's meeting where the opponents of the truck parking, they said 300 plus illegal parkings in Langley itself. What makes it illegal is 4 trucks. That means 1,200 trucks. And that space is only 150 trucks. So you can imagine the scale of the problem. So not that every trucker is interested in doing something illegal. We follow the stringent hours of service rules, equipment maintenance, US DOT regulations, all those things. We can follow, but there is no framework. And that's what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Follow up on some of that. So you mentioned that the ALR, doesn't have a problem. So I'd like to clarify that, because I'm assuming they're communicating with you is you can make an application that has to flow through the township as a non-farm use referral to the Agricultural Land Commission for approval
Yes.
to park trucks in the LR, which it is the township's position that they would reject.
Okay.
So that they're saying this to you, saying, sure, go to talk to the township, but if we were to process a non-farm use, very few of those are approved. So I do want to correct or just highlight that that is a bit of a shuffle, but we would have the position, I believe, that the ALC would more likely than not permit truck parking as a non-farm use within the LR.
So to that, what I would say is, ALC, it says in rural areas, agri-support industry is allowed. Trucking is an agri-support industry. We do support agriculture. All the food and produce, like local farming is only here done 3 to 4 months in a year. 8 to 9 months of a year, we're depending on trucks to bring us food, our supplies and everything. So how are we not supporting agriculture? Everything in the farm, from the seed to the finished product, has to go out on a truck. So the trucks are already coming in and out. All we're saying is, we as a role, as a key helper in making sure our food security, making sure our agriculture sector is viable, we need that support from the local governments. And that is why we're saying we don't want to go into a residential area and park trucks over there. But in a rural setting on truck routes, we need their support to do that. That's all we're asking. And that is why we're working, we have met with the transportation minister, we have met with the premier. They all understand it. So, but while they're going to do that, we want you guys to champion on our behalf, hey, these are legitimate concerns and these are viable solutions. Let's do it. That's all we're seeking.
Just want to clarify too, though, that
Yes.
if someone were to advance an application that met some of those criteria you outlined
Yes.
on a truck route, potentially adjacent to an industrial area,
Yes.
for land not suitable for farming, in their opinion, were to come forward with an application, I'd be curious to see if council supported referring it to the LC.
Yes.
It's interesting that no one has made that application to us to refer it to the LC to test this claim that somehow this would be supported by the provincial government.
Let me be the first one.
Well, please
I'll
do,
that.
because I'd be
Yeah.
curious to see that process play out.
Absolutely. I'll be the example. I have a farm in Langley on a truck route. I have a greenhouse. I'll make that application. I want your support. Everybody here, like all the truckers here, we want your support. We don't want to be a problem. We want to be partners in progress. Right now, our growth, our safety is jeopardized because if we park our trucks loaded with food and other supplies in an unsafe parking, it gets compromised. It's on us.
So the point you're making about support of agriculture to me is an important one, but it's also important to note that it can't just be any farmland. It would have to meet some criteria that we
Absolutely.
talked about. So
Yes,
just
sir.
to clarify that, I had another question about how much is the need? Because some of the, and I think very important voices defend the need to maintain farming within farmland and preserve it for future farming.
True.
Not allow it to be encroached upon for industrial uses, which they categorize. This is their viewpoint.
Correct.
What is the need for truck parking? Because some of those individuals will claim to council, to myself as well, that there is sufficient truck parking within the region, but that it's expensive. And therefore you're parking on farmland when there is a supply of alternative truck parking available. How do you respond to that?
So the
critique?
response to that is, it's not just about the cost, it's also about the availability, and it's also where it's available. If there's parking available in Chilliwack, and we all live in Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, the drivers are on the clock. They can only drive 13 hours in a day, which is still a lot. So if you want the drivers, we all talk about efficiencies, greenhouse, gas emission, carbon footprint, everything. If the local governments want us all to park in Chilliwack and want our drivers to go in the morning, 1 hour, 1.5 hours away to Chilliwack, pick up the trucks, deliver all day, and then go back again, are we not adding to the problem? Are we not, don't we have enough space? The provincial government, the federal government, they all own land across the, lower mainland in areas which are like, along the provincial highways. We have asked them to look at that inventory and open it up for us because there's nothing being farmed over there. The other thing is the trucking, parking need is not very heavy industrialized, so all we need is a flat land, piece of land with gravel on it. It can be easily reclaimed for agriculture if needed. We're not building, warehouses, we're not putting concrete over there. It can easily be reclaimed.
All right, and I had one other question and let go to other members of council. What is the quantity of the truck parking spaces need? So if you're saying we have a shortage, we want local government support to solve the problem, which I know we're working on, which I'll get to in a moment. What is the quantity of spaces you feel is necessary from Surrey to Abbotsford?
About 4,000 to 5,000 parking spots.
In addition to what currently exists?
Yes. And that's the reason, why when people say there's 300 plus properties which are parking trucks illegally, and even if you take the 4 number, because at the 4th truck you become illegal, there are truck parkings with 8, 10 trucks as well. Even at 4, it becomes 1,200, spots in Langley. And if, for sake of simplicity, even if you say, let's say 25%, we write it off as, being exaggerated, that's still 900 spots.
So I'm not texting, I'm doing math, so I'm taking that. And if it's approximately 20 trucks per acre, you're looking to find a supply of 200 acres within this area.
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
About there, yes.
About there. And second one, designated parking areas. I know this is something that we've talked about as well.
Yes.
That is something that this township and this council has been looking at very aggressively, which is to increase the supply in the short term through temporary use permits for non-ALR land, being very supportive of that, going through the right process, but also openly potentially having council consider openly designating additional land for truck park use. Not sure we can get to 200 acres, but I definitely agree with the delegation. I definitely agree with the need. I know you have strong support with other mayors within the Fraser Valley from Delta to Abbotsford.
Right.
The challenge being the shortage of available land when we're constrained by the land use layered on us by the province. And so I think this is where I think we're in agreement that the solution has to be found
Right.
more at the provincial level than at the local level, because especially the township where we already have such a shortage of non-ALR urban land, which I know
Right.
you and I have talked about. Yeah.
And it also ties into, we've all moved into work from home, scenario, right? So if I live in the farm and if I have a company and I can farm, not everybody's seeking, 50, 100 truck parking in their farms. Everybody wants just enough to, keep doing their own business. That's all we're seeking. And in that process, if we can, subsidize parking to our farmers or, neighbors or others, we would like to do that. But under, proper framework and in a certain limit, that's what we're all seeking. Yeah.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for coming and articulating so well the problem and some of the possible solutions. I also, my family, my dad, my brothers are all in the trucking business, so I hear it all the time, how difficult it is for not just parking, but for all kinds of other things, all challenges that some truck drivers face. We mentioned that there was support from other mayors. What kind of support are you getting? And I guess, for me, I would like to see every municipality, provide enough truck parking so it's not just, a few municipalities, but that, if you live in Richmond, that you have a place where, you don't have to come out to Surrey is that being contemplated in your conversations with the different ministers and mayors?
Yes, so the first challenge is to actually, see how difficult the problem is. Again, we've been, everybody's been studying it for 15, 20 years, 10 years. Abbotsford is doing another study right now. They're in the midst of it. We are meeting them, on Wednesday. So the problem is there. Everybody knows the problem is there. But why are we, still putting our blinders on, not, solving it? If we go down to the States, US is spending about $100 million on the I-5 corridor just to find safe parking spot for truckers, because they know how critical this is. They want truckers to have proper rest areas, proper truck stops along the I-5 corridor. In the Lower Mainland, we do not have one single truck stop where we can say, there's 200 trucks, can stay overnight, fuel up, get maintenance. Someone talked about truck washes. We don't have truck washes in Langley. How many do we have? It's just that we have made it so difficult for the whole process. This industry is here, the need is here, but we made it so difficult that it's, difficult to get those services that the truckers need. And that's, the problems, cannot be solved by just, doing more study. Let's provide some immediate relief till the government and the other, bureaucracy, they come up with the, proper solutions and framework to solve this.
Thank you, and you're a great advocate, so hopefully something comes together.
Thank you very much.
And some of us in the region say that Vancouver and Burnaby and Richmond would be happy to solve this problem to the every last inch of land in Langley.
Yes.
And I think it is a regional problem that requires a regional solution. Because even if we were to find, a significant addition of supply through the temporary use permit, even as early as this year, it's not going to come close to the 200 acres you're looking for. So that's going to need to be a regional solution.
Right.
And at the moment, I'm not sure who's going to coordinate that. Metro Vancouver, is requesting in writing that the province address the issue as well through some of my advocacy, but it's just a letter. It's just one letter among many.
I saw the letter. It was shared with me.
Yeah,
yes.
It's just a letter, but it's potentially a start where Metro Vancouver may want to start identifying this as something they need to solve, very similar to the regional parks system,
Right.
to have regional truck parking system.
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I think an awful lot's been said, Mr. Coomer. I think you represent the BC Trucking Association and a number of your groups. Thank you for coming, and I think you probably brought some people with you. Thank you for coming
you.
as well. I want you to leave here with a little bit of homework to do, just like we do. Okay, well, here, when you mentioned the I-5, I've already written down in my notes when I hit the button for speaking. That was 5 minutes ago. And they are doing a lot. We have highways.
Yes.
We have highways running through Lang, 2 or 3, and we have the main ones as well. There should be, I know they already have areas along the highway they have to park because they're doing construction along these. Surely to goodness, when you leave here, meeting with the local, which you're already doing, local people and your MLAs and MPs, to talk about those very things, because those are the perfect places to put things like truck routes and also truck parking along the actual highways. And I know they own land along those corridors, and including the interchanges. The next thing is, talking to the federal government, did you folks know that there's about 1,100 acres of federal land up by 264th? It's a Canadian Forces Base, Aldergrove, but they don't need 1,100. Surely to goodness, they can free up some of that land for a very use, real close to highways, for truck parking. So there's another bit of homework, and I know you know the MPs, the MLA, there is some land. The third thing is kind of a little bit further fetched, but it's never to ask, is Indigenous folks have lands as well, sitting down and talking to them about possibly putting some, I'm not saying hundreds of acres, but again, opportunities for parking as well. So these are all things that you can take with you, because trucking is important, we all know that. And also you got to keep your trucks safe, because in the news we're always hearing, it's not you guys, but hearing people not maintaining their trucks properly. But the thing is, that's what the public wants. And if we all work together and get everybody on board, and the mayor's already taken some of my thunder regarding regional district and other things, and you can move forward accordingly. But thank you, as other members of council said, you're a good advocate. But you just keep doing, because it's important. But we don't want you to be waking our citizens up at 3 in the morning with trucks and stuff, right?
We don't want to do that. But trust me, like someone who comes to the truck at 2, he probably left home at 1 o'clock to get there. And, that person is only going to take that truck or the load in that truck to a local warehouse where the people in the community will receive it the next day or the day after.
You know, our colleagues in Abbotsford, too, they got all those mined-out gravel pits. There's some parking there, too. Anyway, I'll leave it with you. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kumar, thank you very much for delegation. Next
Thank you.
delegation is Parminder Sangera. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and all the brothers came here to support us. And my name is Parminder Sangera. I speak today on behalf of Reliance Logistics, as well as 300 other companies who are facilities a critical issue regarding truck parking regulation in the township of Langley. For the past 20 years, we have been struggling with the parking problem that is a direct result of neglect from both the city and the provincial government. The rules set by Agricultural Land Commission back in 1973 when the population was 2 million, are no longer suitable for the current population of 5.2 million. Despite the obvious need for the change, the city and the provincial government have failed to update the rules, leaving truckers in a difficult situation. And it has been suggested, however, I believe there's a fundamental misunderstanding. The food on everyone's table, the clothes you and I wear, and the drinks as we all enjoy all the come on the trucks. As Brenda Locke said when we had a meeting with her, it's an economy on the wheels. We are not asking for special treatment. We are simply asking for a fair solution to a problem that affects all of us. There's a misconception that trucking is against agriculture. Let me assure, I came from farming background. Even in it, I grew sugarcane, wheat, rice, and the corn, winning award for my produce. When I came to this country, I pursued my dream of farming and bought a small farm with the blueberries. Additionally, I haul produce from BC to California, supporting agriculture in both regions. We are not enemies of the agricultural land. We are the supporter of the biggest supporter of the agricultural lands because we haul all produce in agricultural lands. We have tried to find solution by proposing to apply for permanent truck parking, but we were told that it would be not possible. We have also met the transport minister, premium, yet nothing has been done. The current practice of issuing removal orders and wasting court time and public money is not a solution of truck parking. Finally, it is essential to emphasize that as we collective of trucking companies are a crossroads, if the issue is not resolved promptly, we will have to choose no but take unified action. In response, the Canadian Trucking Association, as Amit talked, convened a meeting of representatives from the Delta, Surrey, Township of Langley, Abersport. The response from these municipalities was encouraging with their willingness to address our concern. Unlikely we have experience in Township of Langley, which should be solved today. There are close to 2,000 trucks in the lower mainland facing similar challenges, highlighted the urgency and the scale of this issue. This leaves us with the question, where are we supposed to park our trucks if the authorities are not providing a solution? The service of the truckers during COVID-19 closures, 2021 flood closure that cut off the lower mainland from the rest of the country, highlighted the need of vibrant local trucking sector. During that time, there were people all around the US and Canada who were thanking a trucker, or truckers were heroes. But now we are made to feel that unwanted people in the community. How is that fair? Every farmer, owners allowed to make use their farm to supplement their farming income. We are truckers not plundering or damaging the land by the parking of trucks on our own farms. We are using the newest and most efficient trucks trailers that exceed the newest regulation around pollution and noise pollution regulation. We are investing in electric trucks and trailers to reduce carbon emission and efficiency. As soon as we leave lower mainland, these are scales before Hope, Kamloops, Golden when you're heading to Alberta. And as you're going to states, there's a scales after every 200 miles. So we have to keep and up to date our trucks. For the last 6 months, we have a meeting with lobbying the local provincial government to fix this problem. This is not our job. We elect governments to find solution, but we get a victim of this, and society needs our requirements. I urge the council to consider this problem that truckers are facing this community to find solution to this problem, not making criminal of hardworking trucker. Therefore, I urge council to grant us permanent parking for 5 years subject to an environmental report. After 5 years, the environmental report should be reviewed before permit renewal. Furthermore, if trees are removed to create truck parking and equal to greater numbers of trees should be planted and more. In council, I ask councils, on conclusions, I ask council to vote in favor and we will address this provincial government to further action. Some of people, they came last night. There's a highway was closed between Golden and Revelstoke. As I avalanche, there's an accident in the tunnels. Some are leaving tonight. Some have left their office and came here to address this issue. I know everyone wants to make money, but how come we are getting victim of this? This ALR or ALC not made in back 1973. After so many years, 50 years, the rules are the same. Population grow almost more than double. Why the rules and regulations are the same? It should be changed. We just knocking door, premium, transformation, every councils, we are not getting anywhere. What should we do? I'm done with that.
Great. There's no more questions from council. Oh, Councillor Ferguson.
Mr. Sangera, thank you for coming. Is there any chance you can give a copy of your presentation to the clerk? If you
Absolutely.
don't have it, you can copy and bring it another day.
I have this one.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sangera, for coming.
And thank you for your delegation. Just to confirm, of course, the Agricultural Land Commission and the dimensions of the Agricultural Land Reserve is the purview of the provincial government. And we really need to refer you there to advocate for changes to the Agricultural Land Reserve and the system that governs it.
We try to that, but we are knocking door, here and there, but no one giving any, because they're just fingering each other. We go to provincial government, they said it's a city issue. We come to city, they said provincial issue. We are not finding any way.
Yeah, and I sympathize with that. I'm not sure in what context they're referring it back to the Township of Langley. May have addressed that in the previous delegation, that they're suggesting you can make an application to the township to be referred back to them, but ultimately for them to relax what's permitted on farmland, we're not even allowed to pass a bylaw without their approval.
Yeah.
So it is heavily controlled and entirely controlled by the province.
Yeah, we have a question on behalf of all these truckers. If the city cannot find a solution for this parking, how come everyone's getting ticketed about that? If a rule is regulation made in provincial government, how come bylaw come and sent by city giving the ticket? You guys agree with me? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, so the reason for that is that the Agricultural Land Commission does not provide significant, or almost any that I know of, enforcement of their own regulations. They rely on local government to enforce those regulations. And the zoning bylaw approved by the province limiting the quantity of trucks on farmland is enforced by the local government, but to change that would require provincial approval.
Okay, we will talk to provincial government on that.
And I sympathize. We know it's an issue. Councillor Ferguson and others have highlighted very clearly the idea of using all this excess land in between the freeway or around the freeway. There's all kinds of provincial land even available that we do not have jurisdiction over. And even if we were to advocate for it, we're not allowed to change the rules.
Honestly, me and Amit, 50% of our energy every day go in parking issue, along with all these friends. We just have a meeting every day. Instead of doing these meetings, we should be focused on our business and help the community and help ourselves. It should be, we need your support, as Amit said, so then we're gonna go after provincial government. We need your support.
And I think you have it there within the confines that we all exist in regards to the regulatory regime that surrounds this. And in the advocating for and asking for temporary use permits on non-ALR land to increase that supply is something that's ongoing. Contemplating specific designations for truck parking within new industrial urban land plans within Fraser Highway, potentially in the Milner area. We are working on increasing supply where others have not, but it's a long process, as you know, to change land use.
As Mr. Mayor, you know, I got a court order to move my trucks. I'm parking my trucks in 6 different places. All night, what I do, I have to give a ride to drivers back and forth. My son do from 3 to 8 o'clock in the morning. I do from 9 to 6. We have our duties to give our drivers ride here and there. I just want to what criminal and what crime I did, which I have to do this. No one ever answer. It's not a solution giving a court order to someone which is hardworking. I have 100+ employees, and how much payroll we have to give, and how much supporting with the government, and what we are getting in that. All the municipality and the provincial governments are forcing us to go in other provincial where they're welcome with open arms, and they say, come here, we'll rebate in the tax, and here's the land. In 3 months, we're gonna approve you all the truck parking and everything. Why is it not happening here?
It's a process that's underway, as you know. It is happening, but it is a slow process to get landowners that have non-ALR land wanting to designate it for truck parking use, getting that through the process and getting that approved as quickly as possible. we would be advancing it as quickly as possible. The city of Surrey has the financial resources to acquire land that we do not. We do not have those financial resources, but we are going to try to get some additional land supply into truck parking use, but it has to be non-ALR land based upon the regulations that are imposed upon us by the province.
But there's no land. We tried every single thing. There's no land. And only if we buy some land for 5, 6, 7 million acre, we only allowed for 3 years, 6 years total permit. After 6 years, the city kick us out because they want to make more money on that land. They want to convert that land to commercial land and charge more taxes. So then what should we do?
Yeah, so the temporary use permit process and regime is designed to allow you to use the property for the contemplated use while you rezone it. It's not intended to defer or avoid a rezoning process where the land use can be codified and set up and restricted essentially in what is required for the land use applied for. It's not a process to be kicked out after 6 years. It's to provide time to use your property in the short term while you rezone it. It is not a mechanism to avoid a rezoning.
Yeah, but after 6 years, I understand your concern, but after 6 years, we have to find other 17 million acres. Maybe 10 million acre after 6 years, maybe 15 million acre.
Hopefully by year 6, you have completed the rezoning process. And
I really appreciate it. I really thank God if that happened. First time when I came to meet you, Mr. Mayor, you said there's a lot of complaint against me coming from my neighborhoods. My question to the neighborhoods, are they eating food or not? Are they, I don't want to say, but are they using even toilet paper? Are they using all those stuffs? They are using it. Then why that hate is for the trucking? What crime we did, right? And I have almost 50 drivers stuck in a Revelstoke between and Golden. If those 50, you want to complain, we have a complaint, we have 50 people here. We can bring another 100 people. We are complaining about it. We want your help in favor of us, though then we can go under provincial government.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegation C3, Mr. Moonen, Mr. Wine, please come forward. Is it wine or wine? I've been told two different answers to that question, so. Wine. Wine, that's what I thought. Please come forward.
Thank you for having me here and looking at our submission. I'll try to keep it very brief. We've got a nursery in Langley that my grandparents started in 1970, and my great-grandfather worked on it. My son and my nephews are there now, so we're 5 generations have been on the farm. We've consolidated most of our farms now into an area off 48th Avenue, kind of between 48th Avenue and Poppy High School. The parcel that we own that's near Poppy High School has a very strange wing on it. It's 1 acre that looks like it was actually aligned to come with the 237th Street down the side of Poppy. And the road ended, that wing stayed there and was attached to our parcel. It's not farmable. We've actually fenced it off because it's just a pain in the neck to use. It's the neighboring property has a lot of conifers on it that provide a lot of shade. And a good 30% to 50% of the property is in a ravine, or enough ravine that you can't farm it. So it comes out to like about 1/2 an acre of flat land. And by the time you take the trees that cause so much shade, there might be a 1/10 of an acre that you could actually grow something on. It's not viable. So that's why we've just fenced it off. And what we'd like to do is subdivide it off, and then we'll take the resources from that and invest it in automation in our greenhouse. We currently employ about 150 people who, a lot of them live in Langley. And as you know, with our high land costs and our high cost of doing business, how we need to stay in business here is by automating more. And we like where we live, it's great. But we do need to automate more and keep getting more efficient and drive technology. And this will just help us to enable to do it. And currently, and I think forever, that lot will sit unfarmed because it's not farmable.
Okay. Any questions? I don't see any questions from council, so thank you for your delegation.
Thank you.
Move on to reports to council. Item E1, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100436. Moved by Councillor, who was that? Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on E1? Call the question on E1. That carries unanimously. E2, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100402. Moved by Councillor Rint. Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion on E2? Seeing none, call the question on E2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E3, DCC front ending agreement. So moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a clarification on this. Was this the land that was intended to be a truck park? And now it's not going to be a truck park? It seems to me, if I'm looking at the diagram on page 12, lots 16, 17, and 18. I thought that was the truck park that was supposed to go in there. Why would we be supporting not doing a truck park?
Your Worship, through to Councilor Richter, the subject DCC front ending agreement is subject of the maps shown on the screen right now. The DCC front ending agreement and the subsequent DWA bylaw provides for ministry required infrastructure upgrades to the traffic system on 30A Avenue for a fire signal to allow emergency vehicles to move northbound and southbound, as well as upgrades to a full turning movement at 29th Avenue. That will allow the rezoning applications currently under review by the township to proceed. So there's a benefiting area advanced by the BD group on their application that then benefits this area here. So hopefully that provides the clarity.
Not really, because 16, 17, and 18, I recall a previous council allowing that application to go through on the basis that it would be a truck park. And now it's not, it's just going to be light industrial. We've just spent 45 minutes listening to the issues around truck parks and the need for them. Why would we permit this to go forward and lose a potential truck park?
Through your worship to Councilor Richard, thanks for the clarification. You're correct. There was a previous application on lots 16, 17, and 18 that were then subsequently came to council and supported for an industrial use other than a truck park. There's industrial buildings proposed on lots 16, 17, and 18 by the BD group. And part of the rezoning requirements, as determined by council and as specifically provided for at third reading, required the provision of those traffic signals as I previously noted. So that's why the subject application is here today.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E3. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E4, capital request 56th Avenue widening project. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through yourself to staff, just a question in regards to, is there a timeline or a plan for similar widening to occur east of 213A? And if so, when will that occur? And for this current widening program, is there anticipation of landscaping in the median that's going to be put in on the section west of 213A to 211? Thank you.
Thank you, to your worship. Two questions, two different answers. The report that's in front of council is to essentially complete payment to the contractor for the works already completed. So what you see out there is what the final product is for now. Notwithstanding, there could be the 1 year maintenance period for the landscaping. I can specifically look into that and report back afterwards. With respect to the section to the east, I believe, there is currently no projects funded in the 5-year capital program, so I am currently unaware of the timing of when the next phase would occur.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, call the question on E4. That carries unanimously. E5, capital request for IT equipment. I will move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on E5? I do have an amendment as well. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to understand or know if there's any issues within this theater I recall being sick in the fall and wanting to zoom in, and we didn't have the capability of doing that within this facility here, or within this room. Are any type of upgrades to this room contemplated in the 5-year plan?
Yeah, so no, that's a separate capital request within the budget that remains unfunded.
Okay, but it's not under the IT umbrella.
It's not for part of this request.
Okay.
It's definitely part of IT umbrella. A portion of that project is, but it's not part of this request, which was specific to equipment replacement.
Okay.
Yeah. So is there anything else? So I can make that amendment. Everybody's distributed that. Ms. Bauer, maybe want to bring it up just in case. I'm going to move that amendment. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Either through yourself or through the chair, the Information Technology and Equipment Reserve, that would be annual transfers going in. This is a capital reserve, if I may?
That's correct. Ms. Ruff?
Correct, that would be a capital reserve.
And would we, now I'm looking at the particular amendment right now, 250 per year and 300 and 226. Will there be an expansion as the years go by past the 5-year, or we have to review that accordingly?
Ms. Ruff, I think the idea would be to build this up, given the number changes every year, so we wouldn't be seeing taxes go up and down based upon these requests. Maybe you could just confirm that?
The intention would be to determine a funding amount that could be consistent year over year to provide a stable basis for their requirements.
Would it operate very similar to the Public Works Equipment Reserve?
Correct.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. I support this amendment. I just want to get clarification. The original recommendation in the agenda for us to authorize the use of up to $800,000 from the Capital Projects Reserve, et cetera, that still stays. This is just in addition to that recommendation?
That's correct. It's an amendment adding to, not replacing.
Okay, thank you. Then I can support this.
Okay, great. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the amendment. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Now back to the main motion as amended. Call the question on E5 as amended. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Bylaws for first, second reading. I'll move it. Is there a second or seconded by Councillor Bailey? Is there any discussion on F1? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I'm sure there's been some done into this point, but I'm curious if this is a first and second reading, is there going to be opportunity for input specifically from industry on this policy?
I believe schedule item paragraph 2 to schedule a public hearing would provide about a month, I so, for public input, and then the formal public hearing. Is that correct? Notification requirements. Do we know when the public hearing would be?
Not yet. Oh, perhaps March 26th.
Next 26th.
Okay.
So that would leave a month for some feedback.
So it's not going to necessarily be a separate stream of input. It's going to be through the traditional opportunity for public input that industry might be able to participate in.
Yeah, they'd have a public hearing coming up, and of course they could all email us at any time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I support the direction this is going in, because unlike some people, I'm well aware that kids do live in condos these days. 4 out of the 5 neighbors of mine are multiple children households in a condo building, and so for a lot of people, the condos are no longer starters. Those are where you're going to be for a long time. So I think we do need to be aware of that. We need to be realizing that we're heading in a new direction, especially as we run out of developable land. So there's obviously going to be pushback from industry on something like this, a significant change, and looking forward to those conversations. So I appreciate this coming forward.
Councillor Van Popte?
Yeah, sorry, my laptop won't fire up here. I remember seeing in the report that there was verbiage around doing a policy regarding acoustic transfer between floors. I just want to make sure that this is just like a best practice thing, but isn't going to be mandated. It's costs like that actually drastically increase the cost of housing when we start stipulating more than doubling the acoustical barriers between floors, especially with concrete. So I just want to make sure that this is just best practices and a recommendation, and it's not actually going to be a policy that we adhere to, but we'll make it builder's choice.
Mr. Bracken?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. And just following up on Councillor Pratt's comments, I'm glad to hear that there will be some public input, particularly from the industry, because I did already hear from the industry on this one. Currently, projects are 700 to 720 square feet. This will add $30,000 to the cost of an average unit, as they'll have to build bigger units, and a possibility of keeping it more affordable, changing the requirements from 750 to 725. So I just want to put that out there now. I know this is still being discussed and vetted, and we'll have further input, but I did hear that. I wanted to just bring that to the floor.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I think the point is out there is the fact if you want to provide housing for a number of different people from different jurisdictions and needs, that's one thing. But on the other part, those building them, if they want to provide them more density and provide opportunities for people to purchase for certain prices, those are things that have to be explored. So I'm sure they'll come up at the public hearing, but those are notes I also wanted to comment as well, as my colleagues have said as well.
Yeah, great. I think this is fine. I support it to go to public hearing, and we can get some of that information. And of course, also still have to address potentially implementing some in-stream protection as well. So I think again we can deal all with that at third after getting some healthy input. Call the question on F1. That carries unanimously. Bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Highway Development Works Agreement Bylaw, Bylaw number 5982. Somebody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I still think we're losing potential truck parking opportunities there, and the public should be having a say on that one. So as this is first, second, and third, I'm opposed. It should be going for public hearing.
Seeing that, I'll call the question on G1. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Bylaws for consideration at third reading. Official Community Plan Amendment rezoning application number 100273. Bylaw number 5971, 5972. Moved by Councillor Rent. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking at this particular one. I was wondering if I'd like to prefer a referral based on the comments of the public hearing and staff explore the opportunity for the existing density and through the referral process.
Okay, I'll come back to you. There's one other speaker.
Yes.
Councillor Van Popta.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to, with Councillor Ferguson's referral. Currently, based on the public hearing feedback, is that they're worried about the height of the building being up against a townhouse complex. Yet when I look at the floor plan or the site layout, we've actually got a green space in front of those townhouses. And if we converted it back to the original plan, which is all townhouses, they're actually going to have properties butting up closer to them than a building. And so I just want to be able to address those concerns with the public, especially in that townhouse complex, that if we do revert it back or reduce if we go back to townhouses in that area, that they're actually going to have people closer to them than if it was the park space that was it was a U-shaped building. So I just want to make sure, I'm not sure if they fully aware what the site design was. This one, I think we should definitely be considering the density that has been increased in that area, but I'd like at least the concerns addressed with regards to the site layout.
We'll see what the referral is then. Yeah, okay. Councillor Ferguson.
That referral, I did want to comment that those indeed comments by Councillor Van Tofka, that would be some of the things that would be explored. But number one, the comments made by delegations or residents at the public hearing, and number two, looking at the densities and the past requirements and looking for an exploration as to what they can come up with for a referral process and a report back to council.
So do you have a referral motion?
That is a referral.
Can you maybe can you just remind me what the referral motion is then? Because
refer based on the comments of the public hearing
Yep.
and the existing original zoning.
Okay, great. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on that referral? Councillor Ferguson, do you have anything else? Go. Is there any more discussion on that referral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the referral of H1. That carries unanimously. Bylaws for final adoption, I-1, Tree Protection Bylaw Update 2024, Bylaw number 5987, 5988. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. I do have an amendment. Is there any discussion on the main bylaw? Seeing none, I'll move that amendment. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment to I-1. That carries unanimously. Back to I-1 now as amended. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I-1 as amended. And that carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Pratt opposed. I-2, rezoning application number 100664, bylaw number 5864. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to staff. I was made aware that there was potential conversations around removing some of the surface parking on this application in exchange for adding some more either amenity space or just general green space. Can staff comment on what our policy is in regards to promoting that kind of transition, especially in close proximity to potential future rapid transit, and why that wasn't actually in the end included in this application?
Mr. Richardson?
Through to the councillor, staff support impervious surfaces, green space. So there's a balance there, Your Worship, in terms of meeting the township's current parking bylaws, as well as the amenity space requirements. Certainly, if there are opportunities between the development permit stage and the building permit stage, if there are minor amendments proposed to increase green spaces and permeability, as well as not affecting the overall requirements for parking, staff can certainly do that on a minor amendment basis. If they are requesting amendments to the bylaw, then that'll have to come back to council, Your Worship.
So through yourself to Mr. Richardson, there is no policy in any of our neighborhood plans then that would dictate that a proponent, say after this is approved here, between now and building permit stage, could apply for a variance in parking without having to come back to council?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great, so call the question on I-2. That carries unanimously. Development permit application number 101244. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on the development permit? Seeing none, call the question. That carries unanimously. Item J1, Smith Athletic Park. I'm going to move the amended version of the recommended motion. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any other discussion on this version? Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yeah, just in regards to the amended item 7, can I ask staff if we have any requirements from the school district to help with replacement costs of turf? Currently, do we have any type of agreement with school district? 35? Yes, no?
Through yourself, Mayor Woodward, if the field has been built on school district property under a joint development agreement, then we would be responsible for the replacement of that artificial turf. If it's on our property, then we are obviously are as well.
So either way, we're responsible for turf replacement?
If we have built the field and have ownership of that field, yes.
Okay, so I would like to move an amendment to your amendment.
Amendment. So maybe we can discuss this first because this here is optional for them, the way number 7 is structured. So
all I would like to do is after, number 7A, it says 2.5 million to upsize the easternmost exterior soccer field to allow for rugby play. And then I'd like to add with a commitment of 50-50 future replacement costs of the rugby turf.
okay, I can come back to you. Councillor Martins?
Oh, and sorry.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
And sorry, my And sorry, my rationale for that is because rugby play actually reduces the turf wear and tear by almost 50%. I think we can get 14 to 15 years with soccer. If rugby is using the fields, then it's going to be reduced to 7 to 8 years. So if we're going to have to replace these turfs more often for rugby for the purpose of school district using it, I would like them to contribute to the replacement costs.
We can certainly cover that on the amendment, but okay, that's good. Thanks. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, has any discussion on this taken place with the School District 35? Because
Mr. Baggett?
it seems to me that us dropping this onto the school district without having had some sort of discussion with them isn't exactly fair of us to do.
Your worship, we brought it to their attention. At this point, though, we don't have their position. This is a work in progress.
Okay. So, yeah, it's too bad we don't have the joint task force anymore, but that's gone the way of the dodo. The other question that I have, number 6, the total of all that borrowing is 58.991. Why wouldn't we just have one borrowing bylaw? Why are we having 3?
Ms. Ruff?
We can do it either way. Sometimes it's easier to deal with the provincial authorities when they're itemized and more easy to detail.
I'm getting a little worried that we're sending an awful lot of budgeting borrowing bylaws through to the MFA. At some point, they're probably going to start asking us why we're spending to this extent. I just want to raise that concern. The final question that I have is, what is the total cost of this Smith Athletic Park amended version?
Mr. Winslade?
Worship, the total costs haven't changed from the previous staff report, which was dated January 15th. It's including everything on-site and off-site, 154.7 million if all phases were completed. However, this recommendation does not include all. I'm sorry, I haven't actually added up what it does entail as a phase 1.
Yeah, because 11 and 12, the costs aren't included in those, are they?
Those were itemized in the staff report with high-level budgeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So we started out with a $40 million project that's now up to 154.7 million. I just don't know where the money's going to come from. We can't keep borrowing like this. Thanks.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And when I saw this come back on the agenda, it was, you know, a lot of thought went into what I was going to do on this, because it wasn't a campaign promise of mine for this type of facility. But at the end of the day, I was a 5-year-old Langley United athlete all the way through till almost university. So recognize the importance of a facility like this, and especially when you're trying to put a community like ours that's growing as fast as we are and trying to put us on the map in different ways. I think this is an exciting project, but wanted to make sure that we're actually getting as much value for our money out of as possible. And I think about what the things that I campaigned on were and what were priorities of mine. And I thought of completing our road network so people can actually get around faster. I thought of building the infrastructure needed to actually accelerate the construction of housing. And I thought of the trail networks. I thought of the added park space that were required. And when I think about the fact that sort of, for lack of a better term, generic community park that we'd build in other facilities would cost in the realm of $40 to $60 million on a site like this, versus the cost of what we are going to be getting in addition to that, I start to see the value for money here for the kind of facility that we're going to build and for the type of amenities that are going to come along with it and the type of community that we're going to build around it. So I'm excited. There's definitely, you know, still concerns in the long term. What are the operating costs going to be? How are we going to maintain it? What does that mean? What are the effects of building 4 outdoor turf fields on the local environment? You know, have the heat island effect. There's all these concerns, of course, with a project like this and a project this size, but I think it's the right thing to do right now to at least get it started, because if we don't, it's just going to cost more. So I appreciate it coming back today.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I really support this because I'll tell you right now, my grandson, my granddaughter, both go to Surrey so they can play soccer because it's so plugged up here. And this is the kind of stuff that that sets communities back if you don't do this, and if you just keep putting it off and putting it off because you don't want to borrow money now. It's just going to get more expensive, and you're going to have to borrow it. And the reality is, like an awful lot of other things, it doesn't get built. So sometimes you just have to go ahead. You have to work as hard as you can to get facilities. So kids have got something other than going to the mall and hanging out on the streets and that. And it is proven that sports, especially team sports like soccer, make better citizens. And I can't support this enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think most of the people here at this table and probably in this room have been involved in soccer of some sort. All three of my children were involved, and my son played at a high level. And, you know, there's lots of things that go on with soccer. And I think we're always accused of not preparing or building for the future. And I think this is an example of doing that. And this will hopefully work for accommodate soccer and other sports for the future. I guess I always like to say I always liked the school district because I was a teacher, because we had all our fields too that we use for soccer as well. The school district could continue maintaining theirs and using theirs as well, and our folks in the city that they keep up to their promise. They promised they were going to build an all-weather turf field there in the city. So hopefully they'll follow through with their commitments as well. But other than that, this is a great opportunity for the future. Unfortunately, it is an awful lot of money, but if we don't spend it now, it'll just be that much more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward. And I won't repeat the other comments here other than, yes, we need more facilities like this in the township. I have a number of questions. I'll just sort of go through the numbers of the points here. Item number 2, that council endorsed potentially adding to the Smith Athletic Park project childcare, outdoor nature spaces, additional tree plantings, and additional playing surface as practical and appropriate for council to consider. So if I'm inferring correctly from this comment, these items aren't already in the report or the plan that we have received so far. Is that correct?
Mr. Winslade?
That's generally correct. As I think we discussed last time when we were talking about this report, this will be a community level park for the township, and community level parks contain many different uses. To date, we've really focused the planning on a site test fit for being a bit of a soccer field / rugby field focused park, field lacrosse, all those other uses we've talked about. So these types of things that council would be asking us to consider, we would definitely consider as we further along the design. I'd say perhaps the additional tree plantings is already contemplated, but it never hurts for council to reinforce that. So,
thank you. So what I'm hearing then is additional expense for these items that are not already budgeted for here?
Mr. Winslade?
Well, within our base level funding, something like, I'm just picking on the specific wording here, but outdoor nature spaces perhaps doesn't have much additional cost, but could be contemplated. Definitely if it's childcare, potentially could be in the building, might have to be exterior, we'd have to look at a lot more detail. So potentially there are additional costs here, but we'll report back to council as part of one of the latter motions about coming back with potential phase 2 items, include these in that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Our community needs all of these, no question about it, all the items listed in this point. I worry about the location. I'm not sure if the user groups are okay, maybe they are, with putting a dog park right in beside a high-level soccer facility. We get regular complaints from people in the Yorkson neighborhood with the dog park there and the noise late at night that comes through our distribution list. And we definitely need dog parks. I'm not certain that this is a suitable location, but I would defer to, like I said, the people using it if they think so. Then the other item is a childcare facility. Is there space within the buildings already contemplated? If that's the case, that's great. Although who is this child care servicing? We don't normally see childcare facilities like at Langley Event Center and McLeod Athletic Park for the users of the facility. I recognize the community needs more childcare. We definitely need more childcare spaces in our community. But what is this in close proximity to? There's a middle school and a high school. Neither of those sets of children will be using this childcare. So how close are the next closest schools? So I just put all those thoughts out there. Not that I have a problem with it. I just would like to see this unpacked a little further. And maybe when staff comes back, if they could provide answers to some of those questions, I think that would be helpful. And sorry, to my question about the user groups and in general, will there be an opportunity for public to give their input on some of this beyond the actual soccer campus as to what they'd like to see in that neighborhood, what's important to them? Will that be included in this process?
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Winslade? I thought that was rhetorical. Mr.
No.
Winslade, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through the process of all of our community and neighborhood level parks, we generally do public information sessions, and we receive feedback at those. So I would anticipate once we have an endorsed plan a little bit further along, we would take that out to the public. A little bit of this is already formed from some of the neighbors in different areas.
Thank you. And okay, moving on my questions here. Point number 6, I was quickly going over the amendment that I received right before the meeting. And I noticed a change with regards to the funding in point 6, that the original referred to park development cost charge development program, stormwater development cost charges, and just over 30 million in community amenity contributions. And I see that the DCCs and the CACs have been removed from this paragraph and replaced with all external borrowing bylaws. So we're getting away from development paying for this and borrowing the money. And I'd like to understand what that means. If I could ask, I guess through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Ruff, the implications of that, the burden to the taxpayers.
Ms. Ruff?
I think that the change on this was just to remove the details as we work through the details on how we will fund that borrowing. I believe that it was always meant to be a borrowing. It's just the funding source from it.
So it was never meant to be funded through DCCs and CACs?
As they're available, yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Then my next question was with regards to point 7. I believe Councillor Richter mentioned this as well. I just want to, the way it's written, direct staff to confirm with School District 35 a financial contribution. That infers to me that they've already committed to it in principle. Do we have anything from the school district that they are ready to join us in this joint venture?
Mr. Bracken?
Not at this time, Your Worship. As mentioned previously, this is something that's been brought to their attention for their consideration, and we believe they're doing so.
Okay, so do we have a plan B if the school district is unable to help? I don't want to see this project sidelined. I guess that's my question.
Mr. Bracken, a plan B?
I think the intent of the motion would be that we would revert back to the original playing field size, and it wouldn't be optimum for rugby play.
Thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer all of my questions. And I would conclude with, this is a really important project. Yes, it is a big price tag, but it will really enhance our community and you know, the soccer community in particular, and the schools that will be built there eventually, having access to these fields. I think it is it's a real win. It's a real win. So thank you for all the work of staff. And I know there's representatives from the user groups here. I want to thank you for your input, and I look forward to the continued discussions as we move forward.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, actually, my question also was about borrowing and how we're paying for this. I think some of the other things that we're doing, apparently we're using CACs to pay for the interest on the loans. Would that be correct?
Ms. Ruff?
We will use CACs to fund projects where they are available, when they are available. And that's probably all I can say.
Okay, so, so right now, our CACs are being used for a whole host of projects, so I'm just trying to figure out, at some point, if the CACs run dry, I want to be able to understand then, you know, what our tax, I mean, obviously, the taxpayer is going to be paying for this, let's not pretend.
No, it's not obvious at all, Councillor Coons.
Isn't it? Oh,
No,
okay.
it's not, actually.
Okay, sorry, I'm just like, I'm
Let's
not,
not mislead the taxpayers.
hello, can I just finish my
It will not be
comments here?
covered by property taxes, Councillor Coons, but go ahead.
Okay,
There's no point of order, Councillor Richter.
no, I'm really happy for you just to restate that, because, you know, I'm not part of, you know, any conversations. I've never been part of any conversations about this really awesome facility, and I want to build facilities, but I need to figure out. I didn't get elected on you know, where I'm going to build a whole bunch of facilities. It was a lot about, you know, fiscal responsibility is why people voted for me. So I need to ask these questions and get clarity. So forgive me if I'm not, you know, phrasing them in the right way. So what you're saying is that there is no way the taxpayer is. Then I happily support this. Happily support this. So I will vote in favor. Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that this was never going to be a $40 million park. If you add up item 3 and item 5, you've got $31 million even before you get a surface. That's just digging in the dirt and putting in pipes and other on-site and off-site services and detention. And so this was never going to be a $40 million park. It's a slope site that has some challenging conditions, and it's unfortunate that it's that we're not recognizing the challenge of this site and just even getting it to a flat surface. And unfortunately, you know, this might not have been the site that I would have picked if I was on council earlier for a facility like this, but this is what we've got. And unfortunately, $31 million is just going underneath the ground where you're not even going to see the work being done.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to, we have first-time speakers exhausted. Do you want to move your amendment?
My amendment to your amendment? Can we do that?
This is a motion, not an amendment.
Oh, that's an emotion.
Yep, so
okay.
go ahead and make your amendment to the motion.
So my amendment would be at item 7, that council directs staff to confirm with School District 35 a financial contribution of A, $2.5 million to upsize the easternmost exterior soccer field to allow for rugby play, and then this is the addition, with a commitment of 50-50 future replacement costs of the rugby turf.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Go ahead. Any other discussion?
Yeah, so the only reason why I add that is because adding the rugby component is strictly at the benefit of School District 35, and it is actually causing earlier replacement costs to this township field. And so I think it's only fair that they share the early replacement costs of that surface.
Okay. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I understand the intent behind the amendment. I am just curious, working through the thought process here, because I understand that it's a school district requirement. These are township students. And who's to say that we secure this commitment now, but within all reason, this school district cannot meet that commitment a few years down the road because they have very, very different resources and tools available to their disposal than we do. What does that then mean for us as a municipality if then we're on the hook for those 50% of that commitment that at that time, you know, we all of a sudden have to do something about, raise taxes, who knows what that's going to be. So I'm just wondering if this is going to put us too much in a bind. We're trying to secure the $2.5 million from the school district. I think that's a worthwhile intent. I'm just not sure on securing this ongoing commitment, which may or may not be within their capabilities. I'm not sure.
Councillor Martins?
Thank you. I actually was looking to amend point 7, so I'm having difficulty with the current amendment because it's still, the current amendment proposed here still uses the word confirm with School District 35, but what I'm hearing from staff is there's nothing to confirm. Really, we should be looking at staff to request funding rather than confirm. So I'm not even getting past that line as to why I wouldn't want to agree with this amendment.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, I think, the intent behind mine is that is to put it on School District 35's radar, that if they're going to ask to use our fields for their facilities, which would be for rugby play, that they, it's reasonable of us to ask them to have an ongoing commitment, not just the initial capital investment. And, if they're not willing to contribute long-term to facilities that they use, then I would actually just ask that we don't even convert this to a rugby field. I'm getting a little frustrated, with providing services to other, jurisdictions, whether it's, City of Langley or if it's a school board. Yeah, we're all the same taxpayers, but, as much as we're all the same taxpayers, whether it's going to school or to township, there is kind of that line between what's our responsibility and what's their responsibility. And I'm just asking that we let them know up front that we will be expecting a contribution to them in the future for early replacement of the turf fields.
Replacement when necessary.
Replacement when necessary, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I think it's important that we discuss it, being a former rugby player and rugby coach, and I know with the fact that youth rugby, and we're talking about schools, it's very important from a very early age on. It's not always about tackling and hitting and being aggressive. It's an awful lot of what they call touch rugby, which where people run the ball and touch and practice and running skills, kicking skills, and other things. And it's an excellent sport for that type of thing. Usually a rugby field, the ones I've worked with when I was teaching, it was kind of a multi-use. Maybe it's obviously that's not going to be the future, but I remember rugby fields were used for soccer. They were used for obviously rugby and rugby play, and the odd time, depending on the school district, there was football as well there. So. There's an opportunity for a lot of things on these fields. I think it's a benefit. The 50-50 future replacements, that would depend on what those costs are, how they are. To protect soccer, rugby, football fields, we all know that you do not have play on that during extreme weather, snow, things like that. You put the signs up, you block the fields off, you protect your asset. And I think that's what our Parks Department does on a regular basis. So I think it's, hopefully Councillor Van Popta is going down the right path with future. It's very, very difficult for us to predict the future, but let's hope we can move forward with a very positive relationship with the school district. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I still struggle because just as we're hamstrung with what we can do on the ALC in regards to truck parking by the province, the school district's hamstrung with the resources they can collect to be able to contribute something like this at a future time. We have a school district foundation primarily because the school district can't always necessarily go to the province for the required funds for what they need. So potentially maybe the wording could be read back so that it's completely clear what we're asking from the school district, because if it's a commitment to contribute to the field when it needs to be replaced, and the school district all of a sudden comes up and says, sorry, we can't make that contribution, that's going to be funded only one way, and that's through us increasing our contribution, which is a concern for the council that has to deal with that at that time. So maybe if we can get the wording read back, that would be greatly appreciated.
The added wording is with a commitment of 50-50 future replacement costs of the rugby turf.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just weigh in here a little bit with it. So you can certainly ask. I mean, the reality is that if you don't ask and there's no agreement, because Mr. Backen, it could be structured as an agreement that it would be enforceable. So they couldn't just say, we're not going to pay. There'd be mechanisms to enforce an agreement. The reality is, though, if we don't make the request, we'll be paying for 100% of it right where we are now, right? So certainly no harm in asking and putting it on the radar. Synthetic turf fields are different in the sense that they don't naturally renew, and they're quite expensive to replace. And the replacement program coming up for even in Aldergrove and other areas is turning out to be something that hasn't been planned for at all by previous councils. There's no money set aside to replace these fields, turf fields, like we're seeing in other communities, like Coquitlam, for example, and others. So I think it's really important to get on a program to determine the cost and the long-term issues of how we're going to fund replacement of these in a timely fashion. We are not currently replacing them quickly enough in Aldergrove and even at the LEC. And so this is an ongoing problem I think we have to solve separately from this particular project, but certainly have no harm in asking. From what I sense, the school district completely takes these facilities for granted. Councillor Bailey.
I actually kind of like this amendment because I hear what Councillor Pratt is saying, but if we put it out there now, they have 7 or 8 years to plan for replacement costs. So it's not like we're saying that you would have to come up with that money now. If they agree to this, then they would be able to put it in their budgets and plan on how to afford to replace this in 7 or 8 years. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask at all. I think it's a very reasonable thing to sit there and say, plan for the future.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. And I appreciate what Mayor Woodward was saying. I just wrote down your words, no harm in asking. And I agree with that. I worry, again, that the wording here is not an asking, it's confirming. So, and then the other thing is I have a bit of difficulty with, you know, these, the students go to their school or having the benefit of using this. They're Township of Langley students or kids that live in the community using a community field. And I don't really like making that, drawing that line in the sand. It's them versus us. We're all here trying to benefit the community. And I'm going to go back to, again, we haven't confirmed anything with them. We can ask, but I think we need to leave it at that, see what they suggest and what they can do, and come back to us with it. And then we have a plan B if they can't. Because at the end of the day, yes, we want to have fields that are in good shape, that are well maintained, and that potentially need replacement down the road. So I won't be supporting this amendment, and I will try and make an amendment to perhaps change the wording here in number 7. Because there's nothing to confirm.
Yeah, I mean, them versus us, I think, is just honestly ridiculous. This Township of Langley taxpayer, through community amenity contributions, is contemplating building a $150 million facility next to the high school. So the idea that we don't recognize that these are youth in our community and investing in facilities and locating them adjacent to other civic uses such as a new high school or middle school, I think is exactly what we've been doing. Mr. Backen, this has been a long-standing partnership to locate these facilities, which the township could locate anywhere, and we're locating them next to the school district facilities. So I think it's pretty clear that this is a pretty strong partnership, even if there's some disagreements around the fringes. Do you want to comment potentially?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, so I'll call the question on this amendment to item 7. That carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Martins opposed. Now back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Pratt, did you wish to speak again?
No.
Okay, Councillor Bailey?
Yes, one thing I think that is getting lost, and it hasn't been mentioned here either, is something that I campaigned strongly on. And soccer, rugby, and even field lacrosse are all low-cost sports. And nowadays, with so many families struggling to make any ends meet, sports like this are needed more than ever. And to make the opportunity to include kids at a level where you have to buy a pair of boots and a couple of pads and that kind of stuff is something that can't get lost. It can't get lost that we need children to be included and especially in team sports. And soccer to me is one of those sports. I played rugby for a while. Again, you need cleats. That's just about it. And field lacrosse is another sport that is also very low cost. So I strongly support this kind of stuff because as the tough times keep getting tougher, which it looks like it's going to be, I think these kind of facilities are even more important.
Councillor Ferguson?
I just wanted to add on to Councillor Bailey. Obviously, the soccer, the rugby, and we also promote our relationship with the region regarding parks, regional park, our own parks, passive parks, and nature parks, and other things. But again, they're not expensive and good to use, and community park for people to use. So those are all, I wanted to add that to the list that's important for us as a community to keep developing. And although City of Surrey calls themselves a city of parks, we have just about as many as they do. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, I know I seemed pretty adamant I didn't want to speak again, but that was me forgetting we were on the main motion. Through yourself to staff, if I could just get some clarification, please, on item 5 in regards to the on-site and specifically stormwater development cost charges and what that will be going towards. Is that a detention pond on site? And if so, does that cover off any catchment area beyond the park itself? Does that include potential housing in the area?
Mr. Winsley?
Of the $9.2 million, approximately 6 of that is detention. On-site engineering staff and our corporate projects, parks design development staff are currently furthering along the refinement of where exactly it will be located and how it will operate, but about 6 million detention and 3.2 is a storm outlet that connects us to other current existing infrastructure.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is, beyond the park itself, will this detention pond provide detention for residential components within the Smith neighborhood plan?
Yes, it will.
Yes, some.
So thank you, because that's one of those items that gives me a little bit more confidence and certainty in approving a cost envelope like this, because at the end of the day, what that will mean is that we can deliver more housing, which comes along with not just homes for people, but the CACs and DCCs that come along with those homes, which will go towards roads, parks, specifically in this area. So I just wanted to confirm that, and I appreciate staff doing that.
Significant portion of the 9.2 is recoverable from development. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'd like to propose an amendment, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, to point number 7, where it says that council directs staff to confirm with School District 35. Could we maybe change the wording to staff to potentially secure from School District 35 a financial contribution?
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. You wish to speak to it?
Yeah, just like I said, I just feel the way this is worded, there's an assumption that the school district is already committed to the money, and it sounds like they haven't. I'm just not totally comfortable with agreeing with the word confirm. And I know I'm getting into the weeds on this. I want to reinforce that I definitely support the general direction this is going. This is a much needed facility in the community, and I don't want to stand in the way of that. I'm just a little concerned about this one piece with regards to the school district. If we could just change the wording, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I'll have to consult the dictionary a little bit more from now on. So when I chose confirm, it was simply to go and request it. So it could have said confirm, it could have said request. There's been no commitment made by School District 35 to contribute. So confirm would be the same as walking up to someone and confirming if they're happy or sad. It's not that I had any idea if they're happy or sad or not. So honestly, I find the amendment just silly. Councillor Van Popte?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Making a motion or an amendment for semantics is a little frustrating at this level.
Yep. Councillor Martins?
And I don't appreciate being called silly.
The amendment is silly.
Pardon me?
The amendment is silly.
Well, that's a reflection of myself, and I don't really think that's fair. To me, I actually believe the word confirm doesn't mean walking up and finding out information. Confirms means double checking and making sure. So that is why I have a difficulty with that word. And I think semantics are actually extremely important in our governance of this community. We need to be very careful about wording on what we're voting on. And I do not think that makes me silly at all, and I'm sorry that the Mayor and Councillor Van Popte feel otherwise. It's unfortunate those comments were made.
Councillor Ferguson?
Mine's back to a question. We've got amendment in front of us.
Yep.
If I may, through the chair to staff, did staff indicate that the school district said no?
Your worship, to clarify, the school district has not said yes or no at this point. It's under consideration.
And that's what the reason for my question, because I wanted to make sure that they hadn't said no, that we're still going through a process. Anyway, thank you.
Yep, thank you. I think that's just it. They're aware of it, and it's to confirm. So I obviously don't support this amendment. So call the question on J1. The amendment to J1. It's labeled J1. That amendment is defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Rampopoulos, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion as amended once. Is there any other discussion? Yeah, so I have some. So obviously, a bit of a sidetrack there, but to focus again back to what is a pretty fantastic amenity project for this community. I spent a significant amount of my time this past couple of weeks coming up with phase one, working with the staff on what phase one would look like and how it would be funded from the variety of sources listed here. Really appreciate the time that management took to work through that to get to this recommended motion. It's a challenging site. 208 A Street doesn't exist. 76 Avenue needs some work. 208 there connecting to the connector doesn't exist yet. The connector to the south doesn't exist yet. On-site detention, sewer, water isn't to the property lines yet. So there's a lot of work to be done just servicing this land to begin with, and that's embedded in the sort of the second half of the motion, with the funding sources sort of laid out and identified to be the buckets and the budget envelopes that they are. As we've highlighted here many times, the community is growing rapidly, adding about 5,000 people per year in the last 3 to 4 years. With the demand for recreation and other facilities, parks and road and transportation infrastructure increasing significantly along with that. And we have to get ahead of it. We've been playing catch up for so long, for so many years. And I certainly appreciate what I'm assuming is going to be strong support here to move forward with a great facility next to the site projected to have a high school and middle school site on it not soon enough. And I think it'd be great to come back in 5 or 10 years and see this side by side with a high school and middle school and some of the other amenities that potentially could be added within a phase 2. I think this is a very financially responsible way to proceed with getting the 3 fields into play as soon as possible for youth in our community that need it. And phase 2 can be examined by council in the fall before Christmas, hopefully, and potentially see a way to complete this project very soon. And I think it's very reasonable and rational to proceed with it. There's a lot of talk about how we're funding these things, and there just isn't the recognition or the understanding of funding sources, and it's frustrating. I was frustrated there a little bit earlier. To have it stated that it's going to be property taxes just isn't true. We have hundreds of millions of dollars coming in through development, through a real plan for our growth, through the fair deal that we all talked about during the last election campaign, where for so many years we developed so much housing in Willoughby and didn't charge a single amenity contribution for that. Years behind other communities in generating development revenue to pay for things that are needed because of the population growth. That is the funding source, and I don't know how many times I have to say this. So with that, I'd like to call question on what I think is a great phase 1 for a great, fabulous addition to this community, and I can't wait to see it get underway. With that, I'll call the question on J1. And that carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Mayor and Council report. Does anybody wish to make a report? Metro Vancouver report? Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson.
Finally, I get to do a report here. I know I've been waiting back. I know that if you'll notice the regional district, if you've been watching the TV or radio, they are doing cooking oil and oil going down the drain. Please do not put cooking oil down the drain. Simply wipe the container and put the area you wipe. Don't use a cloth or something, and put it in your green bin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other report? Is there any discussion of items N1 through 5? Any member of council? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Specifically on N4, the Glover Road pedestrian plaza update. I understand that we have kind of 2 contradicting sides here. We have a public engagement process with significant support for the ongoing commitment of this plaza. However, we do have opposition from some of the business owners in the area. And I think that both sides are completely valid in their claims and their rationale. I do wonder if an alternative besides simply getting rid of it could be that staff over the next month or 2 or several months before the summer inquire with any of the other sort of service-oriented businesses in Fort Langley, the cafes, the restaurants, because a place like this, while it might not be suitable for in front of a hat store that doesn't see the traffic or doesn't depend on bums in seats, so to speak, to be financially viable. If we put this on Mavis, where all the cafes are and people can come and go and sit down, I think the financial return, and all the studies have shown that the financial return for businesses on something like this, as opposed to 2 parking stalls, is significant. So I believe if nothing is done, the plaza will be simply removed. So if that's the case, I would move that staff proceed with engagement with other businesses in the Fort Langley Village to see if there is a interest for another business to have it located in front of theirs. And if so, what that process might look like in terms of a highway use permit, et cetera, and how that might be expedited. So I understand that it's a bit of a on-the-fly type motion. So I'm wondering if we can just refer this potentially to next council meeting so that there's time to formulate a specific motion.
I'm not going to weigh in. This is in Fort Langley, probably still a bit of a gray area. I don't think there's any risk of any pecuniary issues, but I think if there was a split vote, there might be some accusations made. So for council's okay with it, I'm going to ask that N4 be deferred to the end of the meeting, and then I'll declare a conflict of another kind, and I'll let Councillor Bailey take over and handle this item.
Sure.
Okay? So I'll come back to you. And if that's be the case, Councillor Bailey, if you're going to discuss the same, I think we'll just leave that until after other business, and then I'll let you handle that item. Councillor Richter?
Yes, item 5 on the Heritage Advisory Committee, page 4 indicates a Pioneer Recognition Planning Committee. I'm just wondering who's on this planning committee?
Mr. Backen?
Going by recollection, I believe there's some members of the Pioneer community and a couple of staff. We can get back to you with the specifics if you so wish.
Okay. And the other question that I had is, it strikes me that the name Pioneer is not a very inclusive name for our community, particularly as we have 4 First Nations that have traditional territories here. I'm wondering if we could request the committee to rename itself. I don't know what they'd rename themselves to, maybe a History Recognition Planning Committee, something more inclusive.
We can bring that to their attention, Your Worship.
How would you do that, Mr. Backen? I mean, there's no motion sort of asking you to do that, so I wouldn't want it represented that that's my position or the position of council.
If you feel more appropriate, then we can simply either raise it with them in terms of this was a concern expressed by a member of council, or there can be a motion.
Okay, so a member at this point. Okay, great. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have questions regarding N1. Just looking at the report, the only thing I found a little frustrating with this report is that the stop work orders, I can't differentiate between if those are stop work orders on permitted or unpermitted soil activities. Is there a way to find out how many of those stop work orders were for illegal operations or just people who weren't complying with their permits?
Your Worship, through Your Worship, excellent question. Our software that we use in our arsenal basically asks us to flag certain files, whether they start as an application, whether they start as a stop work order. So essentially, it would take some more time to differentiate between how they start and which files started as permitted and which ones are unpermitted. But it's definitely something we can do if so requested.
Okay, well, I'm not asking to put more workload on you. Do you know approximately how many of those stop work orders were for permitted activities? Give or take, ballpark, percentage, 50%?
During my days when I was actually actively enforcing this bylaw myself at a manager level, historically, a lot of our files started as stop work orders versus permitted files. So I can say probably likely more than 50% were likely because of stop work orders, i.e. unpermitted site.
Okay, and then they converted to permitted. Okay, that's fine. That's good. Thanks.
Anything else on items N1 to 5? Seeing none, I'll go move on to item P1. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on P1? Seeing none, call the question on. Oh, gotta be faster than that. Councillor Martins.
Thank you. So I'm reading this through, and the idea has some merit, but I feel there's some information not here yet for me to know which way to vote on this. I haven't seen any delegations or complaints or concerns raised by residents with regards to HandyDart services. Does TransLink have the capacity for this, to take it over, like the physical resources, you know, the financial costs? I guess I just wish there was more information available, unless I have missed any sort of a report from staff on this. Has there been any communications on this already?
Yeah, I've had a few. This was requested by the HandyDart group, and I put it on the agenda for them for council to consider.
Okay, so were those communications shared with council? Because I'm asking, we get a lot of information coming our way, and I'm wondering if I've missed something.
I'm not sure if what you missed or didn't miss. They met with me, and I agreed to put it on the agenda for them.
Okay, all right. Like I said, I feel if there was more information available, I would feel more comfortable weighing in on this. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I had the same concern as Councillor Martins. This motion is the first that I've heard of the issue at all. And I hardly think it's appropriate that we endorse a coalition when not all of us have been privy to the information about the coalition. I had a question perhaps staff can answer. Will there be a cost to the township of this?
Mr. Bagan?
It looks as though this is simply actually providing a letter of support, so there would be no exceptional costs associated other than the time to draft the letter that's going to cover the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. This is also the first time I'm seeing this, and I guess a few questions through yourself to yourself or to staff, whoever can answer. Based on your initial comments there, it sounded like this was brought forward by the coalition itself, who are the HandyDart users. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
advocating on their behalf as well. They have a really compelling case, and multiple municipalities in the region, Burnaby and Port Coquitlam, have already signed on.
Yeah, there was a letter that came in today where I saw the list of signatories. So I'm assuming the cause, and I didn't have quite the chance to read the whole letter, but I'm assuming is because the organization itself feels like unless this happens, the financial viability or the feasibility of the program continuing is slim to none.
Right now, TransLink's had, from my understanding, been using taxis or been having other taxis and private sector entities fulfilling the service, and the claim is that they're not providing the level of attention and care to the people that use the HandyDart system the way that they feel they have and would for those users in the future. And I agreed, and again did discuss it with some others and put it on the agenda for council to do with it as it pleases.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. I'm happy to support it.
Yep. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you for me. My question, whoever answered, again, it's a notice of motion, so we're presenting it accordingly, we're getting information accordingly. So anytime a councillor brings a notice of motion, in this particular case, they're supporting a group or organization. Now, this is going to the TransLink board, not the Mayor's Council. It's going to a different board. Is that not correct, Mr. Mayor, if I may, through the chair?
Yeah, it's the TransLink board that makes this decision.
So because a lot of times there's a confusion as to the Mayor's Council and TransLink, and the TransLink board, which actually are the main distributor of funds and actually looking after. I feel bad for those folks, and the mayor included, on the Mayor's Council and TransLink, because their hands are tied a lot and people expect them to do more. So anytime we can support groups or organizations and keep the pressure on the TransLink board and their members and their CAO, that is good, and I'm certainly support it for that reason. I know there's a number of steps that need to be taken, and HandyDart is important for those that just don't have the access to other forms of transit. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, could I get some clarification on what number 1 means in reference to the taxi trips?
I believe that the idea was that the private sector could augment the service but not be the primary provider of it.
I am really glad, if I understand this correct then, to see someone much more responsible handling. I have a personal experience with people in wheelchairs, and also know of a very close friend who's in a motorized wheelchair. And to say that the taxis are very deficit in their service towards there, many times they don't show up. Sometimes what they even do is demand payment before they load. And the taxis are not an efficient way or an effective way to deal with those who are mobility challenged. I hear horror show after horror show of my friend who is even stranded and stuck on in the snow because the taxis would not come and get to her. So yeah, I support this and getting a better service to people who are mobility challenged.
And I think that was the source of it. Councillor, I think I certainly support it. I think it's woefully needed, and they had a compelling argument. Councillor Ferguson is quite right. This was filed well before the deadlines, and people had multiple days to Google this if they wished. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, most of the notices of motion that hit this table are from any single councillor or mayor that's sitting here is because somebody has advocated to us on an issue. And we don't get privy to each other's information sometimes. Sometimes if we have a chance to talk to other people, we do. But I'm happy that the coalition reached out to our mayor and advocated for something that's important. And I saw this a couple days ago and I didn't have any concerns, so I haven't reached out to ask for any clarity. So I just want to thank the mayor for taking the concerns and bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, and it was specifically requested by them, in the sense that there's a version that has just the mayor's signatures on it, but they really wanted council to also have a chance to weigh in. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, well, it is a group that's making this decision, and that group has 9 members in it. And usually what happens when the group is asked to do something by a coalition or a community group, often they should make a delegation to council, so all of council gets the same information at the same time and can participate in the decision and the discussion. I know that when groups come and talk to me, I always say, make a delegation to council so that all of council has the same information. I'm disappointed that didn't happen in this case. I think that the coalition should have been asked to come and talk to all of council. And I'm looking at the wording in here, which has significant implications for TransLink as well as taxi drivers, I would guess. And we should actually have heard from the coalition ourselves so that we could ask those questions. So I'm having a tough time supporting this because this is a corporation with a board of directors. It's not a sole proprietorship.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. I just feel compelled to, I spoke early on here, to clarify, I heard Councillor Bailey's, comments with regards to having adequate, appropriate service for people who require HandyDart and these sorts of services. So, and I just want to reinforce that my concern is not, I want to advocate for the best service available to this user group. I won't get into the personal reasons for it, but I certainly know it very well with an immediate family member. The issue that I have with this is that I don't feel I have enough information to endorse signing a coalition, an open letter, and putting ourselves on the dotted line, fully supporting this movement without actually having heard from them and had the ability to have a conversation. And like I said, what about TransLink? Do they have the capacity to take this on? There's just a whole lot of questions here. Unfortunately, I can't support this right now. I think if we were able to do some more work on it, I would feel better about it.
Seeing that, I'll call the question on P1. That carries. Councillor Richter, Councillor Martin's opposed. Okay. P2, enforcement of agricultural land commission decisions. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yes, as we heard the confusion earlier with the delegations about ALC and ALR and the relationship with the township, you know, here we are, we can do what we want. It goes to the ALC. The ALC makes a decision, and then we enforce it. And sometimes that runs into significant legal costs, and looking into it a little bit, some of these can come up to $100,000 or more. And I don't think it's correct that, that the provincial government is in effect downloading their responsibilities here. Now, if they're going to, I heard in the past them saying they don't have enough people and all that kind of stuff, and if they delegate it to us to enforce and that, the least they can do is pay for it. If they effectively want to contract us to deal with their policies and their decisions, then I think they can pay for the services that we render. And especially when it comes into hundreds of thousands of dollars, from what I've heard, it limits our ability and it severely affects our budget when we're doing this. If we say get 3 of them running, I get $300,000 up and on the table, decisions start coming. Do we go after more? Do we have that in the room for the budget? I view this as a direct downloading from the provincial government of their duties and their responsibilities. And if we're going to enforce, like we obviously do, then we should be compensated for it.
Is there a seconder to this? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Ferguson.
I think that, before I ask any other question, I think there's another step that has to be taken, if I may, through the chair to either the clerk or otherwise, is it has to go to the Lower Mainland Local Government Association first and then to the UBCM. That, if I may, through the chair, is that not correct?
That is correct. We'd forward it to the LGLMA conference first and then forward it to UBCM.
Yeah, well, that's not in the motion. Is that a friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor?
Does that happen automatically, Ms. Brown?
Yes, it would.
Okay, as long as it's happening right. Okay, now I can ask my question. If I may now through the, okay, if I may through the chair to staff, being the fact that the Township of Langley is a regulated community, in a way, that would put more pressure through the Land Commission to do more enforcement, if I may, through the chair, to do enforcement as needed.
Correct. That would usually provide them with more, I guess, motivation. However, they are short of resources, so the number of staff they have in the area are very limited.
Okay, so this has been a pet peeve with me for as long as I can remember. It's not that far back. Anyway, as I was saying, Councillor Bailey is indicating, if they don't have the staff, they can maybe provide some funding or resources. There's other matters, if I may, through the chair, not just our staff, there's legal as well. And have we got any idea, putting you on the spot, how much yearly legal is costing us?
In these areas, it depends. It varies greatly depending on the number of complaints we get. We're, by and large, but not exclusively complaint-driven still in some of these rural areas.
Okay, so if my last comments, when people move out to Langley, or if they've been here a while, they have an out, some folk, oh, I'm buying a property with an outbuilding, got a garage, oh, I think I'll maybe put a hoist there, start fixing cars up. Langley's got a lot of real nice hot rod cars, or whatever you want to call it, different, as a cruise-in type of cars, which are great. And most of those guys, they do it on their own with a single garage and they're only themselves. But the next thing you know, somebody's got a barn with quite a few vehicles in it. There's that, and then people want to have welders going. And it's not always just trucking. There's a lot of different people that figure if they have a bit of land and they want to do stuff, and they're not appropriate uses for that. And bylaws are chasing people all the time. So thank you.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Bailey for bringing this one forward. I have heard there's some significant resources for us in enforcing these decisions. I have a question, sorry if I can through the mayor to staff, maybe putting you on the spot a bit here. Just if we take a step back at a higher level, are there other areas that are provincial responsibility and that we are putting a lot of resources into, like our bylaw, our enforcement piece, who are also having to look after those and costing us money legally and with our personnel that you can think of offhand? I'm just curious if there's anything else we want to throw into this.
Mr. Bracken?
Not the way this motion is framed or what it's attempting to deal with. We're dealing, there are some other areas, riparian areas, but those ministries have much more robust, I suppose, resources available to them.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on P2. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business prior to that last item? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, so I just want to confirm the series of events here stemming from N4. We'll deal with that at the end, but I do have another notice of motion here that I'm submitting now for next meeting.
Go ahead.
And because we don't normally do it this way, I'm wondering what the actual protocol here. I've provided
You
a
can
copy
read
to the
it,
clerk.
or you can read it, or you can provide it to the clerk. She'll put it in the minutes, I believe, as well as the agenda for the next meeting.
I provided a copy to the clerk. I'll read it now just so that folks are aware. So notice the motion entitled 202B Street Traffic Calming. And the whereas clauses read as follows. Whereas 1, recent events have highlighted the dangers of having major arterials such as 202B Street not built to their ultimate safe streets design standard despite the presence of schools or parks in the area. And whereas 202A and 202B streets serve as high priority routes for pedestrians and cyclists getting to and from school, parks, childcare, and public transit, as well as a major thoroughfare for vehicle traffic to various destinations. And whereas with the remaining undeveloped parcels fronting 202B Street at different stages of completion, the timeline for full completion of 202B Street between 72 Avenue and 68 Avenue is unknown. Therefore, be it resolved that Council hereby directs staff to prepare a report to Council which includes 1, a potential timeline for traffic calming improvements to be made to 202B Street between 72 Avenue and 68 Avenue, which may include replacement of the current 50-kilometer-an-hour speed limit for the portion of 202B Street fronting RC Garnett Park with a 24-hour, 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. 2, protected bicycle lanes. 3, a raised and landscaped center median. Item 2, potential costs associated with these traffic calming improvements. And item 3, a discussion of the feasibility of replacing the signalized intersection at 202B Street and 70A Avenue with a roundabout. So moved for the next council meeting.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Just that? Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got 2 items. One is from the distribution list dated February 15th, item number 2. And it's actually been in every distribution list we've had since our last meeting, an email back and forth with Mr. Houston Marsh with regards to a roundabout or traffic lights at the exit of the Carvel Exchange parking lot. And I just wanted to thank Mr. Cordero from our engineering department for his excellent responses and information provided here. And in the one on the 15th, his email said, as the timing of the construction of the roundabout is uncertain, in the interim, the township will conduct traffic and pedestrian counts at the intersection of 86th Avenue and 203A Street during the morning, at noon, and during afternoon peak hours to determine if improvements are warranted as per the Transportation Association of Canada guidelines. This analysis would determine if temporary improvements such as traffic control devices, pedestrian crossings, and improvements to sightlines are warranted. And staff will also review ICBC collisions data as part of this review. I'm really happy to see that staff is going to embark on that. All the way around that exchange is extremely difficult right now in this period of transition for traffic moving about, particularly at peak hours. And my question would be for staff, the results of this assessment, is it possible for council to be advised, being that this conversation has gone back and forth in every single distribution list, to hear the outcomes and if staff are going to recommend any temporary improvements?
I think I'd presume that given the exchange of communications that Mr. Marsh would be advised of the results. So that would appear back on council's distribution list.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And then my other item is actually,
Point of order or point of information, I just want to comment on the same issue.
Yeah, so do I. So why don't we stick to that issue, come back to you, Councillor Martins, for the next issue. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, thank you, Councillor Martin. And today, on the February 26th, we've got another comment from Mr. Cordero to Mr. Marsh, Houston Marsh, and they're talking about a future development and being a roundabout once the developer decides to go ahead. So I think that's in the agenda for the, what's item number 14 today. Just wanted to bring that to council's attention. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, also, Mr. Bracken, council's still waiting on a report, I think from a resolution at the very first council meeting to bring forward completion of 86th from 200th to 202 as a capital project. We haven't seen that report yet. So I think this council tried about 1.5 years ago now, or coming up on that in May, to get a head start on this particular intersection. So I'm sure you could follow up with me on the timeline for bringing that back to council. This was identified as an issue at the very first council meeting, and we have not yet heard. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
thank you. The other item I want to mention is Councillor Bailey and I brought forward a notice of motion at the January 30th, 2023 council meeting with regards to second stage housing within the Township of Langley. And I secured a copy of the minutes from the meeting, and the motion was carried with an amendment that did not change the spirit of the motion, which was for a staff to report to council on the potential locating of second stage housing above or adjacent to the Township of Langley Fire Hall 8 in Walnut Grove and Fire Hall 5 in Brookswood Fern Ridge, in addition to other options understood to be available that may be appropriate for council to consider. I haven't seen that report to staff come back, and I know we're already underway with the Fire Hall in Brookswood, and I'm wondering if there's some timing available for this report.
Mr. Bracken?
We can definitely provide a report or maybe just a memo update to council. Walnut Grove obviously is still just being considered. I guess there's no motions further on the Walnut Grove Fire Hall. For the new Brookswood Fire Hall, that was dealt with through some of the Horn Pit planning as that came forward, and we've protected some land to the west of the fire hall for that potential use. But we can provide a more detailed update to council.
Thank you, because I just want to highlight that we are still the sole municipality in the area anyways without any second stage housing, and it's and I hope that we make that a priority.
Okay, any other discussion or other business? No, with that, I'll turn it over to Councillor Bailey.
First thing I have to say is, Ms. Bauer, can you be ready on the switchboard? Thank you. So we're now discussing N4. So Councillor Pratt, I believe you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. To Ms. Bauer, I can get some assistance on what the best process might be for this. The last two sentences of the memo to council read, based on the negative feedback from 6 of the 7 respondents, those are the business respondents to the December 2023 survey of local businesses, staff will remove the plaza unless otherwise directed by council. Alternatively, if desired, council can direct staff to retain the plaza for the remainder of 2024 and for staff to provide a further update in late 2024 or early 25. Now, the purpose of bringing this up is I recognize that this type of plaza with this type of seating here might not be appropriate in front of certain businesses. Like I mentioned, the traffic coming in and out of a hat store might not be the same that's coming in and out of a cafe or a restaurant. And I think that the reality is the community feedback we've seen is very, very strongly in favor of these types of spaces and maintaining them. And so before we remove it completely, and as opposed to keeping it in the same location, I would hope to get from council, if it was to get council support, the direction to staff to inquire amongst other businesses within the village, specifically those that are service oriented, so cafes, restaurants, etc., if there'd be an interest in having this relocated in front of their businesses, and what the timeline, what the process might be of getting a highways use permit, etc., in place to move this plaza. So that was a lot of words. I apologize, probably too many to get to the point, but I'm hoping that we can get some help.
I think that can be summarized as prior to removal of the plaza, staff be directed to investigate options to replace the structure.
Or relocate?
Relocate the structure and report back to council with the options.
Okay, that would be the motion that I'd like to move, since it's general enough and it doesn't hamstring us there. Would it be helpful, do you think, to put a timeline on that so that we're not going through another summer period with it in that current location?
We could, that would make it a priority over other matters in the work program, so if that's your desire, it can be done so. I'm not sure if we know what the complete work program is.
Yeah, I think that the reality is, I think it would be best for a open air plaza like this to be ready in a new location if that was the desire of council and the community by the summertime. So if we wanted that in place by, say, June 1, when would you expect that the engagement on that should be complete?
Very quickly, but as an illustration, then, just because it came up, the mayor referenced a report that's been due for some time in terms of an engineering project. This would fall in engineering, so this may further bump that behind. So that's what we have to explore.
And I'm assuming that engineering report has to do with major truck routes through the village?
It was which he was referencing. I'm simply saying that that's an example of it, not knowing what's on the priority list.
And I think that one of the potential locations, and this is just a hypothetical for council to consider, is if you consider Mavis Avenue west of Glover Road, where it's no longer on the truck route, but potentially adjacent to the CNR station park, where there's a couple parking stalls that aren't necessarily on the truck route, so it wouldn't necessarily impede any planning process there. I think that potentially then, instead of bumping any program, the motion could be something along the lines of this is included in the engineering report for the aforementioned discussion about the motion that the mayor brought up, if that makes sense.
You done, Councillor?
I'm not going to get testy with you, Your Worship.
I don't know how to cut you off.
So if you finish, Councillor Pratt, we're going to next speaker, Councillor Van Poppel.
I don't know if anything's been moved and seconded, so I would move that Ms. Bauer, and maybe if you understand the last part that I mentioned there, referring this to the report to do with, I'm assuming it's the truck route is what the mayor was referring to, or?
So if I could interject.
Which 86th Avenue report are we talking?
The last motion we were just talking about. The roundabout.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's right.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
It may be easier simply to refer to this as soon as practical, look at this as soon as practical, because we'll have to exercise some judgment, but if this can be summarily done, certainly, but if it involves a bigger study that may bump something else, then we'd report back.
I'm happy with soon as practical, so I'd move that.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Richter? Okay, go ahead. Councillor Van Poppel is next.
Yeah, just a couple points. So through the chair to staff, this plaza was done through a government grant, correct? Okay, so if that, sorry, I see nodding heads. If that's the case, if we tear it down and relocate it, those costs would be on for us to do, so the grant wouldn't cover the relocation of this? Okay. The same people who are talking about, liking the plaza are the same people who also complain about parking. Every survey always talks about the lack of parking in the village. The interesting piece is that directly across the street, there's also a plaza already on private land that could be used for this very purpose and is used for this very purpose. So I think we just need to put this one to bed. I don't think that we should be spending staff's time asking for more questions when it's not going to be covered under the grant anyways, and we'll be footing the bill for it. Thanks.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, the button is on. I just look at this thing and I say, geesh. Just came up, this thing in 2022, constructed in August 2022, and we're, a year later, we want to tear it down and move it somewhere else. Yeah, this plaza. I just don't know if that's the appropriate thing to do, and I don't know if we want to bump other things that from the engineer and put it to the bottom of the list. I'm just happy direct staff to retain the plaza for the remainder of 2024, and for staff to provide a further update late in 2024 or early. What's wrong with that? If the thing's 2022. Anyway, maybe I'm from the old school where I think you say things and you'll try to waste money. But I can't support the amendment. I just want to support the alternative, and we'll get a further update in 2025.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And to clarify some of the comments, if there's no action taken, it's getting ripped up, period. It's not being located. We're wasting a 1 year's pilot project.
The action would be at the alternative motion.
The action, if there's no other response from council, will be to remove it, not to retain it for 2024 and report back on 2025.
You want me to answer that question? You want staff to answer? It's up to you.
Councillor
That wasn't a
Ferguson.
question.
Yeah, it's up to you, Councillor.
The reality is that if we don't do anything, it goes. And the alternative and the compromise is because there's, again, very strong support indicated within the community. And I think any of us and all of us who walk through Fort Langley in the peak summer periods, spring periods, late fall periods, see this plaza well used, well loved, and the studies and the facts repeatedly show that the return for many of the businesses in areas where programs like this are implemented far outweigh the costs associated with the removal of 2 parking stalls that, yes, there's challenges with parking in Fort Langley. There's challenges with parking in Fort Langley all year round, and people do find a way to get there. And I'm confident that people will continue to find a way. The reality is that the amendment would simply relocate this to a position that's potentially more appropriate, serve more of the actual service retail industry in Fort Langley, make it a more interesting place for people to go, give people more protected spaces to sit down and enjoy a coffee, enjoy anything they want in the fort. But again, it's the will of council, and so look forward to seeing this go one way or the other.
For the second time, Councillor Van Popta.
Yeah, so the challenge... Hello? Oh, yep, there we go. The challenge with the previous reports is that it actually didn't request the input of the businesses. Yes, we know what tourists like. They want more places to sit. But the impact on the businesses was not evaluated, which is why we asked for further follow-up. We've received that information. We have the information. And I just don't see the point of us asking for information and then disregarding what the survey results are. It does, and it has consistently from the beginning of the implementation of this pilot project been a problem for the businesses. So why are we not supporting the businesses who this impacts? And again, I'm not interested in, if we're going to build a plaza, it needs to go through the proper streams and go through the budgeting process. But to just say we're just going to relocate it it's in pieces. It was built to suit to the site. And to just move it is not as easy as just moving it. It's going to have costs associated, and therefore it should go through proper channels.
Councillor Richter.
Yes, I think that this is probably a good idea to do, because if it was just built, why would we want to rip it down? I think the suggestion of Mavis west of Glover is a good one, and it could be put there. So rather than throw it out in the garbage bin, I think we should be seeing if we can relocate it to a more effective spot.
Second time, Councillor Ferguson.
Well, I was just trying to clarify, if I may, through the staff. Is somewhere in the report saying we're going to immediately dispose of it? Does it say that in the report, if I may, through the chair?
Your worship, yes, based on the feedback received from the businesses, staff are proceeding with removal of the pedestrian plaza unless otherwise directed.
Otherwise directed, page 2 said alternatively if desired. Mr. Zwag, council can direct staff to retain the plaza area for the remainder of 2024 and staff to further update in late 2024, early 25. That nowhere there does it say dispose of it.
No, it's the sentence right above it, Councillor Ferguson.
So I'm just looking at the alternative. That's the direction I would like to go. Okay. It's different than the motion on, but we're having a debate right now. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt, you're pushing your luck. You've already spoken twice, right?
Yeah, I spoke once in introducing the motion, and I've spoken once in response to Councillor Ferguson. So
Go ahead.
I might
briefly.
get a second time. So yeah, we have 7 responses from all the businesses in the fort, and obviously they'd be from the businesses most likely directly impacted by the plaza being in that location. So I don't know if necessarily we have the full view of where this plaza might better fit in the community. The reality is, yes, there were public dollars expended to build it in the first place. And to Councillor Ferguson's point, to Councillor Richter's point, and to Councillor Councillor Van Popta's point, I apologize. I think it would be appropriate use of taxpayer dollars if we try to find a better place for it than opposed to simply getting rid of it. When the reality is, those long lineups we see outside of Wendell's, outside of Saba, outside of Blacksmith, outside of Beatniks during the summer months, as opposed to people waiting in line, they can be actually purchasing something and being sat, not necessarily in the business, but in very close proximity. And I think that reality is that it will be better for the businesses in Fort Langley across the board than simply getting back to 2 parking stalls, which that parking stall might have 1 person occupying that vehicle. It might have 2, it might have a family, but that's still not as many people as would be using this facility actually purchasing goods from businesses in the fort. So I think in placemaking is important. I think respecting the fact that we have engineering reports coming for important pieces in the fort is important. But I think there's a compromise that can be made besides just throwing it out or keeping it for another year. And if this amendment fails, I'd be excited to see Councillor Ferguson bringing forward the alternative motion to keep it in place for 2024 and have a report later on. But hopefully this amendment can pass.
So seeing no other speakers, I'll wade into this because I was looking at it. And there's one thing that hasn't been discussed yet, and that's people with mobility challenges. This is an asset right now where either young people, people in wheelchairs, people who are challenged and are using canes and other devices to help them, where they can stop and rest while they're walking and shopping or whatever they're enjoying Fort Langley. And I was looking at this why not just leave it in place and when it's natural life, when it starts to deteriorate and no longer become an asset, that's when we can replace it or we can do whatever. And in the meantime, it's probably going to last a couple more years. You don't have some ideas brought forward, like either staff or businesses or things like the FLCA. So I view it as an asset on that side of the street where people with challenges can stop, take a break, and having grandkids, I know that sometimes, especially the little ones, I want to stop and have a break. So, I see a speaker, Councillor Martins.
Thank you. And I apologize just because I don't have the amendment in front of me. I'm just wondering, first of all, if that could just be read back to me because there's been a lot of different ideas and option A, B, C, and otherwise. So I would really appreciate knowing what it is we're voting on, and then I have a comment based on what I hear.
The amendment says that prior to removal, staff be directed to investigate options to relocate the plaza and report back to council as soon as practical.
Thank you. So I appreciate the comments I have heard here so far and being responsible with what we already have in place. I'm just wondering if the alternative option that Councillor Ferguson was mentioning about if desired, Council can direct staff to retain the plaza area for the remainder of 2024, and for staff to provide a further update in late 2024 or early 2025. I feel that perhaps Councillor Pratt's motion could fall under a further update. That maybe hearing this conversation, maybe they can extend what that update looks like to explore other options. Maybe that's a middle ground, perhaps. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm just thinking if the motion fails, maybe it could still be sewn up with that option.
So seeing no other speakers, we'll call a vote. Okay, now I gotta read this. Okay, you vote. It looks like it passed unanimously.
Everybody's entered, everybody's
Oh.
voted.
Jesus.
Sneaking suspicion tells me no.
I think you
Okay.
gotta do N4.
N4, okay. Vote completed. There we go. Okay. We have a tie vote. We have 4, and the four against are Ferguson, Martins, Van Popta, and Rint, and 4 are Richter, Kuntz, Bailey, and Pratt. So it's, a tie vote is a defeat, correct? Okay, so are there any other motions, Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I'd like to move the alternative to desire the council can direct staff to retain the plaza area for the main.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Pratt. Councillor Ferguson, you want to talk to it?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to staff, just want to confirm that with the discussion that's taken place, that update will include possible locations for relocation or a possible process to decide on a location for relocation.
Your Worship, I think it would, subject to, of course, the recommendation being that it remain in place.
And do you anticipate, just because of the wording of this motion here, if it was to come back in a for information report, would the status quo or would the non-alternative motion be that it's removed? Or is it, because quite frankly, we received feedback from the public, they said they wanted it, we received feedback from businesses, some of them that said they don't want it, and the status quo option here was to simply remove it as opposed to explore other options. So I'm wondering if the alternative motion, when it comes back to council, is that it will be removed if directed by council, otherwise it will be relocated. I'm not sure if that's appropriate or not, or if it's clear.
I think it's just premature because we'd have to wait and see what the input actually was, and then council would have to adjudicate upon that input, similar to today, but likely with clearer alternate recommendations.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, seeing no speakers, call a vote. And we have 7-4 and 1 against, Councillor Van Popta against, and we have Councillors Ferguson, Martins, Pratt, Bailey, Rint, Kuntz, and Richter in favor. The motion passes. So before we resolve into close, are there anyone bringing anything forward to take into special close? Seeing no one on the queue, we need a motion to resolve into special close. Councillor Martins, do we have a secondary? Councillor Rint. Okay, all in favor? So moved.
Termination?
Termination, please.
Okay, so I'll vote for, move for termination, Martins, and seconded by Van Popta. Everyone terminate? And I think public hearing is 7 o'clock.
No, special close, 4:15.
Oh, yeah, at 4:15, sure.